Alright, so as you can hear, we're listening to the song here. We've got a mess load of tracks. And we'll look at those vocals. I close my eyes and I slip some compression on it. Bring our threshold down, and we might want to raise our gain touch just so we can hit the compressor. And wait till he gets to where he sings again. When I hear that old song they used to play, and one of the great things is the EQ. You can really sculpt that sound to almost kill. I mean, that's a pretty heavy EQ we're dealing with there. That's a lot of sculptability. If I'm killing all those bands and we're getting almost nothing, actually we are getting nothing at this point, right? So we can really sculpt the sound to exactly
so many people have come and gone. Their faces fade as the years go by.
And I haven't even messed around with the actual center frequencies yet. I'm just boosting or cutting the 4 bands. So you get a little bit of an idea of how far you're going to take your mixes, all right? It's completely night and day. When you're mixing in Reason, you can get really great sounding results out of Reason, but it requires a fair amount of work. If you only ever use Reason with just a 14x2 mixer and you wonder why your songs sound like shit, that's why. You need to use more than just the 14x2 mixer. That mixer is strictly going to be level control, right? You're not getting any tone control, no sculptability, it's just a mixer. You need something to help you sculpt your sound, to center or isolate frequencies, to remove frequencies. You need EQing. You need some compression, possibly, on some sounds to control their dynamic range. And those things are available in Reason, but it requires that you do the work to put them in each device and in each section. Whereas with Record, it's already there. You load something up onto a mix channel and it's there. Not only is it there, but the EQ and the compression on Record is the SSL 9000K EQ and compression. So you're getting a whole different level when you're using Record, even just for mixing. And I've heard people say, well, I took my song that I had in Reason and loaded it up and recorded and it sounds better. It's actually impossible. If you've done nothing to the song, but just load it up into Record, it will not sound any different. Because until you touch the EQ, or the compression, or the master bus compression, nothing else has been affected. So, when Reason doesn't sound that great, quite honestly, you're not doing it right. You have to do a little bit more work. Because I can do tracks in Reason and play you the track and you would never know that it came out of Reason by hearing it. But it requires, unfortunately, it does require a little bit of knowledge of mixing, mastering, and engineering. It does require that you know a little bit about what you're doing. If you're pushing the levels way hard and pumping everything up to the red, yeah, it's going to sound like garbage. It'll sound that way on an analog desk too. Okay? You got to understand a little bit about gain staging and a little bit about where things sit in the mix. And also understanding when you're doing your mix, certain instruments live and will be in a frequency range. So if you're saying that your mix is sounding too muddy, and if you look at the mixer and everything at 400K or 400 hertz is bumped up, well, that's why it's muddy. Or if you really like this bass sound and you select this bass sound to use in a song and it's big and it's fat, and as soon as you add it, everything else sounds like crap, we'll probably have to remove some of the bass from either that sound or other tracks to make space for it. It's like painting. Certain sounds have their spectrum. And if you want that sound to sing, you must remove that spectrum from other parts of the mix. So that spectrum can be totally owned by that sound. Or if you don't want it to step on other sounds in that spectrum, roll all above. On Record, I use the high pass and low pass filters more than I use the EQ when I'm doing mixing. Because high pass and low pass really allows you to set the upper and lower ranges of the sound. I'm never going to go below here, and I'm never going to go above here. And then within that little range, that's where the sound lives, and then I can sculpt in there. So definitely the high pass and low pass filters are your friend. Use those first before you touch EQ. And we'll solo this vocal out. And let's say right here,
it's more than a feeling.
Let's say I didn't really like that little part there at the end, and I want to do some sort of a fade there. I'm just going to chop it here. And when I click on it, you see that there's this little line with a handle. Well, if I just click and drag, that's my crossfade. And right now it's set to snap. So I can click and drag that wherever I want. Or I can just, if I want a really, really short, tight fade, just put 0.2 in. And I've got a really short, tight fade there. So I can do my fading at that point. Right, so really easy as far as your editing for fades. Comp editing is really easy as well. Does that answer your question, or do you have a different one?
Well, like sometimes then you've got a little background noise and you want to just cut out the vocals, so you might have just a little noise coming through and you want to chop that.
You probably don't even need to chop it, just use the gate. On record, you have channel gates. Each one of the channels has a gate, and they're actually quite effective. Here's an example. Right now, the way the normal signal flow is that input goes to the dynamics, which is compression or gating. That goes then to the EQ, and then that goes into the insert effects, which are down here. Now, normally when you're taking a signal, let's say it's a guitar or a vocal, and you're going to compress it. Let's say, for example, it's your vocal, and the guy, like me, has a very bassy voice, right? Well, that's going to hit a compressor really hard. So I want to compress my voice, but maybe I want to roll off some bass before I hit the compressor, not after I hit the compressor. Because if I EQ, at this point, what's going to happen is I'm going to EQ the really, really compressed signal. And every time my voice hits, that bass hits, it's getting compressed. But if I take it and switch so that the dynamics are now post-EQ, I can filter out any frequencies that I don't want in that signal before it hits the compressor. So now my compression is going to be extremely effective and only compress the range that I've selected, as opposed to always getting triggered by every other little bump or noise that's in there. So maybe it's a really sloppy recording with lots of hits and things. Maybe the singer continually hits the mic stand or something, and that's you're getting some low rumble. Run it through a high-pass filter, take out the rumble, and then compress it. Okay, so that's where these come into. And then the inserts, you may have something in insert effects which really modify a signal. Let's say it's a guitar, and in the insert effects you have some effect that's really modifying it. Well, if you're EQing, you're doing it prior to it hitting the inserts. So if you want to EQ it after the inserts, that's where you can do inserts pre. So that way it goes through the effect and then goes back on up through the dynamics of the EQ.